Hello and welcome to India's World. India's approach to the International Court of Justice or the ICJ on the summary trial of Kulbhushan Jadhav breaks with convention. In the past, India has preferred the bilateral route to settle issues with Pakistan. In 1974, India had submitted to the ICJ that it would not accept its jurisdiction in cases which involved a dispute with a past or present Commonwealth country, and Pakistan is a Commonwealth country. This was used successfully by India in 1999 when Pakistan moved ICJ against India. The case involved the shooting down of a Pakistan Navy's Atlantic surveillance aircraft in the Run of Kutch. The ICJ ruled in India's favour, claiming that it had no jurisdiction on the issue. In 2005, India changed its attitude to international arbitration in the case of the Indus Waters Treaty. It agreed to subject the India-Pakistan contentions over technical aspects of water usage in the Indus Basin to a neutral expert appointed by the World Bank. However, the current Indian reference to the ICJ is not about heights of dams or their technical nature, but about consular and human rights issues. Perhaps this measure was needed as Jadhav's life had to be saved, and asking Pakistan to do the honourable thing was not working. An opening was provided by the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, which has been signed by both India and Pakistan, and non-compliance with its provisions can be appealed before the ICJ. Some experts, however, claim that moving the ICJ could open up a Pandora's box and have unforeseen consequences for Indian diplomacy. To discuss this, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. He's one of our most distinguished diplomats. He's former Foreign Secretary of India and has been India's ambassador to Egypt, Turkey, France and Russia. We have with us Ambassador Vivek Katju, another distinguished diplomat. He's been India's ambassador to Myanmar, Thailand and Afghanistan. And we have with us Mr. Narinder Singh. He's a former legal advisor and head of Legal and Treaties Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's also the former chairman of the International Law Commission set up by the United Nations and Secretary General of the Indian Society for International Law. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Ambassador Sibal, let me begin with you. Was it a sign of desperation and failure of bilateral diplomacy that India decided to approach the ICJ in the Kulbhushan Jadhav death case?
Well, I won't call it a sign of desperation or failure of bilateral diplomacy because we've never succeeded, frankly, in dealing with Pakistan on any rational basis or making Pakistan conduct itself as a normal state. So it's not actually a new case in which we have found that Pakistan is so recalcitrant that it will not conduct itself as a normal member of the international community. It just is that the case has become very high profile. Pakistan has wanted to use the Jadhav case to make the point to the internal audience as well as the international community that India is involved in promoting terrorism in Pakistan, especially in Balochistan, from outside Pakistan's frontiers, Afghanistan or Iran or whatever. And therefore they made it a very high profile case. And they've sentenced him to death. It's a military tribunal who's court-martialed him. And in India, naturally, there is a lot of anguish that Jadhav will be executed. And the time frame of execution was uncertain. And hence the desire to move the International Court of Justice to make sure that he is not hanged. I won't call it desperate. It is actually looking at a possible remedy to prevent a hurried execution of Kulbhushan Jadhav, because it will have repercussions here domestically.
Okay. Vivek, is it a possible remedy, or do you think it could possibly be something that will open up a lot of ungovernable issues? It could have ungovernable outcomes. So is it legitimate to expect that the focus will remain only on the consular case, and there will be no precedent set for other bilateral issues between India and Pakistan which could be taken to ICJ?
Look, I think the life of a man is exceedingly important, and therefore if action is taken to secure and that life, it should be taken. But we have moved in a novel way. We have broken from past practice. In the past, in order to avoid any entanglement of the ICJ, we had erected a wall against such entanglement. And that was in keeping with our policy that all issues with Pakistan will be dealt with bilaterally.
Has it been breached now?
what I think the government feels is that it has not been breached because we have invoked the Vienna Convention.
No, what do you feel? Do you think it's been breached?
I think an opening has been created, but it is still not certain whether that opening will will allow Pakistan to go into bilateral issues. Certainly, if we are invoking the Vienna Convention, then in the future, they may be able to invoke the Vienna Convention too and other multilateral treaties. So, what is sauce for the goose can be sauce for the gander.
Okay. Mr. Singh, does the Vienna Convention as international law take precedence over bilateral pacts on consular access? Is this an acceptable or accepted fact in international law? Is it just India's case that this is so?
Well, the International Court of Justice can take up cases where international law is concerned. And certainly the Vienna Convention is part of this international law. India and Pakistan both are parties to it. And India and Pakistan both are also parties to the optional protocol on settlement of disputes concerning the interpretation or application of the Vienna Convention. So the legal basis is clear that both of India and Pakistan have accepted the court's jurisdiction under the Vienna Convention.
But you also have bilateral consular agreements. So my question was, does the Vienna Convention supersede what you've done bilaterally? Because it's international.
So bilateral, the agreements and conventions can supplement. They can fill in gaps if they are there in the Vienna Convention. But they don't override the Vienna Convention.
Okay. Ms. Sibal, this ICJ President Ronnie Abraham's letter to Pakistan government, if you read the wording of what he has said, he calls upon Pakistan that pending the court's decision, it should, quote, act in such a way as will enable any order that the court may make on this request to have its appropriate effects, unquote. Does this mean that this is a legally implementable order staying the execution, or is it merely an advisory saying that don't do anything which might, because it's been projected in the media here that the execution has been stayed. That's one interpretation. Or is that the only interpretation?
In effect, their intention is to stay the execution, because if he's executed, then India cannot get relief on the Jadhav's case, and then wanting consular access becomes nonsense. Access to a dead body, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But that doesn't mean that Pakistan is obliged to follow the direction or the directive of the ICJ. If they want to defy it, they can. And other governments in the past have defied ICJ's rulings. So it all depends on how Pakistan wants to be seen internationally, whether it is a lawful member of the international community and observes international law, or it wants to consolidate the perspective a lot of people have that it is a rogue state. I think it will be very difficult for them, so long as this case is before the ICJ, to execute him, because they will get absolutely no understanding from any source. That doesn't necessarily mean that it will strengthen our hands to deal forcefully with Pakistan, but Pakistan will get a very bad name if they did this.
Okay. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing India approaching the ICJ in the case of a death sentence passed on Indian citizen Kulbhushan Jadhav in Pakistan by a military court. Mr. Singh, is there any instance of countries providing consular access to alleged spies? After all, the 3 death sentence cases that India has cited as past precedents, Paraguay versus the US, Germany versus US, Mexico versus the US, are instances where ICJ jurisdiction was needed to stall a death sentence, but none of them involved an alleged spy.
Yes, in the past there have been cases where the US and the USSR, the former USSR, they had denied consular access to persons who were accused of spying. But none of those cases had involved imposition of the death penalty on them. They were persons who had been in prison, but they had not been sentenced to death.
But these 3 other cases that India uses as precedents, what were they? They were not.
In the case with Germany, there were 2 brothers, the Lagrand brothers, who were accused of committing a bank robbery in which the bank manager was killed and another person was seriously injured. And they were German nationals, but they had spent most of their life in America. and the authorities at that time were not aware that they were German nationals. So they were tried and sentenced, and at the stage of appeal, they came to know that they had this right of consular access, and they invoked that right.
Okay. So all the cases involved civilians of various
They were
kinds.
civilians for general ordinary crimes.
Okay. Vivek, could Pakistan not argue that the 2008 protocol between India and Pakistan on consular access allows both parties some leeway in terms of not granting consular access to prisoners who have been arrested on political or security grounds? And Kulbhushan Jadhav, the Pakistanis claim, is a serving Navy officer, and they allege that he's a spy.
My impression is, but Narinder can clarify this, is that the convention itself, the Vienna Convention, doesn't distinguish between those accused of espionage or others. And if the convention overrides bilateral agreements, then naturally the Pakistanis cannot claim this successfully before the court.
Okay. Ms. Sibal, doesn't the optional protocol on Vienna Convention on Consular Relations that India is invoking also suggest that a series of arbitration and conciliation mechanisms be exhausted before approaching the ICJ? Do you think that these mechanisms were exhausted, or do you think that the haste with which the death sentence was passed on Kulbhushan Jadhav forced India to rush to ICJ directly to save his life?
From what I have read of the Geneva Convention, there's nothing in it that says that you must exhaust all the appeal processes and this and that.
But it does suggest that there should be arbitration.
It's a very clear case that if you arrest a national of a foreign country, that state has a right to consular access. The legal process can go on, the appeal and everything can go on, but you have to give access. Now, in this case, in fact, if we got access, then we would actually be able to ascertain how Kulbhushan Jadhav was arrested, whether he was actually kidnapped from Iran, whether he got a fair trial. A lot of information will come out which we'll be privy to, which we can then use to demonstrate that it was a sham trial, and actually that he was abducted and he's not a spy or anything, and all that we are saying. So the consular access issue is quite separate. In fact, at the moment, the ICJ, why at the moment? They're only going to decide the issue of consular access, whether it's a fair trial or not a fair trial, whether there'll be appeals, whether ultimately the death sentence will be commuted to life imprisonment. This is outside the jurisdiction of the ICJ.
Do you agree with this interpretation that no arbitration or conciliation mechanisms have to be exhausted according to the optional protocol before you move the ICJ?
The arbitration procedure is an optional procedure which parties have.
Okay.
It's not a compulsory binding procedure.
Okay. So did we use that? Did we try some kind of arbitration? Did we try some kind of
Well, I think when India has been talking to Pakistan about this case, there has been no response of any kind.
Okay.
So I don't think any effort at arbitration could have had any success.
Vivek, is India's case before the ICJ limited only to denying consular access to an arrested Indian citizen in Pakistan? And does the Pakistan Army Act or other laws governing Field General Court Martial by the Army provide for same consular access as a foreigner would get if he was being tried in a civilian court?
Look, that's a technical issue, which it's I think the field, the court martial against a foreigner can only be if the foreigner is held to be a serving officer. And that is what they have considered and they have proclaimed Jadhav to be, which he is actually not. He is a retired military officer. So how have they brought him before a field marshal, field court martial, is some surprising. This is distinct from a military court proceeding.
No, this is, if I understand it correctly, Mr. Singh, a Field General Court Martial is held out there, it's an emergency procedure. It's not a normal court martial, isn't it? So in such a case, does the law provide for consular access?
Well, field marshals are conducted under different rules. They're not conducted under the normal criminal procedure or in the normal courts. And it's a very, summary procedure over there.
So therefore, does it allow for consular access? is India right in saying that if you are actually, you've taken this guy, you claim that he is a serving military officer, that he's a spy, he's come there for subversion, and you subject him to a summary trial through the Field General Court Martial, in that case, by the very nature, by the definition of the fact that it's supposed to be a summary trial, are you given consular access?
No, but he has a right to a fair trial in any case, even if it is a
that I agree.
trial.
No, I'm only on
for
consular
that,
access.
he has a right to get the help of his country.
No. The right to consular access is if your citizen or national is in custody.
Yeah.
The custody may be of various kinds. The legal procedure against him may be of various kinds. The right is an inherent right to a citizen to go to his own government and seek the help of his government.
ICJ is not going to pronounce on whether the law under which they have set up these tribunals or whatever they are, these special courts, and the manner in which they are trying them, whether it's a summary trial or not a summary trial. The ICJ is not going to go into that. They are simply going to address the issue whether he should have been given consular access. That's what they're going to pronounce on. The point that I made, and I'd like to reiterate, is that from the Pakistani point of view, the entire thing that they've built around Yadav, that will be exposed the moment we get access.
Yeah.
And that is, in fact, actually it can become hugely embarrassing for the Pakistan government and the Pakistan military if the truth comes out, assuming that the truth is in our favor.
Yeah.
And that's why they've been denying this consular access. And if we actually succeed in getting consular access, which I frankly doubt, because it will have serious repercussions for the Pakistan military internally, then we would have actually won a considerable diplomatic victory.
I'm going to come to you. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the decision of India to move the ICJ in the case of a death sentence pronounced on an Indian citizen, Kulbhushan Jadhav, and we are now going to discuss what are the options before Pakistan. But before that, you wanted to say something.
No, I was just adding that our petition before the ICJ is not limited only to consular access. I think we also say quite forthrightly that the entire trial process was vitiated, it was farcical, and therefore the ICJ should also sort of act against that process.
My judgment is that ICJ is not going to go into this, because whether the trial is fair or whether the trial is not fair, it's a matter of internal jurisdiction of Pakistan, and it involves an individual. It's not a point of international law. I mean, if it was the European Court of Justice, where all the European countries have accepted the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, and anybody who doesn't get a fair trial in any EU country can go to the European Court of Justice, and that ruling is binding. It's not the case of the ICJ. But we were right to buttress our case by saying how iniquitous the whole process was, and it was a sham trial. This strengthens our case, but I don't think, subject to what the international law expert would say, that the ICJ will get into these issues.
Mr. Singh, was it in anticipation of India approaching ICJ that Pakistan on March 28th, 29th made a new declaration before the ICJ, overruling a previous one made in September 1960, I think, that ICJ jurisdiction will not run in matters relating to the security of Pakistan. Do you think Pakistan will therefore challenge the jurisdiction of the ICJ in this case, saying that, look, we gave you a declaration on March 28th, India moved ICJ after that?
Well, I think Pakistan will challenge the jurisdiction, but at this stage, first step is the provisional measures, for which the President of the court has already written to Pakistan to stay the execution and to give the court time to consider the request for provisional measures. And in the case between Germany and the US, the court has already held that these provisional measures are binding, even though the statute doesn't say it in those categorical terms, but they have held that otherwise these provisional measures would have no meaning.
Provisional measures are binding till when?
Till a final decision is taken.
Okay, not and that decision could be give them consular access.
The final decision will come when the main judgment comes.
But I'm saying that the judgment will be about whether or not he should be given consular access, right?
That could be given about consular access and about the trial, whether he has been denied, the fundamental human rights.
Yeah. Vivek, is it possible that instead of challenging the ICJ order on procedural and jurisdictional grounds, Pakistan goes before ICJ and says that we are considering moving the Kulbhushan Jadhav case to a civilian judicial process and give him consular access.
No, you can't, I think, under law, you can't pronounce him guilty and give him a death sentence under a process which the Supreme Court has already accepted, the Pakistan Supreme Court has accepted, and then to give him double jeopardy to move it to another course. I don't think that that's possible, but Narinder can advise on this.
Well, a person can only be tried once for the same offence.
But if you say that that trial was vitiated because he didn't have consular access, and he needs to be tried again in a fair manner with his own lawyer and with access to.
Well, would Pakistan be ready to admit that?
No, I'm asking you that. So, what would so they would? My position is that they would not be.
Yes.
Because that would mean taking on the army. That would mean going away from the propaganda on Balochistan and what they think India is doing there. But I want your legal view on this.
Well, under law, you could have a retrial.
Yeah.
That is only if the Pakistan Supreme Court orders it. It will be part of their domestic process. The ICJ can't be involved in that.
Supposing, let's take a hypothetical situation where actually they give him a fair trial and he exhausts all the appeal processes and he's sentenced to death by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and we have not been given consular access. How does it change anything? I mean, the fundamental issue is consular access.
I said they give him consular access and also.
To my mind, this is unrelated to the fairness of the trial and the appeal process. That can actually be fair. Yeah. Like, you know, it's interesting that in the Pakistan's case, when we have arrested people from their side, they actually denied that they are Pakistani nationals. So in some cases, the issue of the consular access doesn't come up because they are in a denial mode. But anyway, to come back to what I'm saying, is that I don't think that the issue of, unless the fact that he's not been given consular access in the eyes of the ICJ vitiates what may otherwise be, in all other respects, a fair trial. I don't know what the position on this is, but to my mind, I think the two things are unrelated, and the issue before us is consular access.
Vivek, now assume, hypothetically, since we are playing this game, that the Pakistan Supreme Court is persuaded to order a retrial. What would be the political disadvantages of ordering a retrial of somebody who you say is a spy, you say is a subversive agent who's come from India, who's been creating trouble allegedly in Balochistan, and where your parliament has actually supported the death sentence?
That is why I think unless the Pakistan Supreme Court finds fundamental flaws with the procedure adopted by the military court.
I'm saying assume it does after the ICJ judgment, which is favourable to India, which says the trial was vitiated and it's not a fair trial. And then somebody moves the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Then it will have major repercussions, not only internationally for Pakistan, because it will show that this entire edifice of the military courts that they have put, and as you know, following judgments of the military court, there have been hundreds of executions of Pakistan. Yeah. But so international repercussions, there's also domestic repercussions for Pakistan. So I don't think that the Pakistan state or any of its organs will be willing to go down that path.
Okay. Mr. Singh, what has India gained by going to the ICJ? Isn't there a risk in assuming that Indian claims will be interpreted by ICJ in India's favour? What if at the end of the trial, ICJ says, look, it was done according to the existing laws, internal laws of that country, and it was a fair trial, that he was actually given a lawyer appointed by the court, and we have nothing to say.
See, under international law, states have the right of diplomatic protection in respect of their nationals when they are abroad. And this, India, by going to the court, has given a signal to its own citizens that India is ready to step in and ensure the protection of their rights whenever their rights are violated.
Sibal, can Pakistan, despite the ICJ interim order, still choose to go ahead with implementing the death sentence on Kulbhushan Jadhav? Should that, see, for example, and I hope this doesn't happen, I'm saying this only for this, for academic debate, they agreed to give consular access on a particular day, and 2 days later they hang him. They'll say, look, we've followed your order, we've given him consular access, and we've also implemented our law.
I mean, this is what I was implying all this while, that the consular access issue is one issue. What Pakistan does subsequently is another issue. They can still hang him, they can commute his death sentence, everything else they can do. The fact that we get consular access doesn't necessarily mean that we are ensuring a fair trial afterwards, because it is going to be argued before the judiciary there, and depends on what view they take. It can always be a disputable decision that they may take, etc., etc. So the only thing is that Pakistan in that case would have acted in such bad faith that they would have been exposed before the international community. As it is, their image is not very good and it will be tarnished further. But Pakistan is used to this. They are inured to a bad image and to be reviled in so many quarters, including their former allies. So if they really want to act in a totally arbitrary manner, irrespective of the consequences for themselves in terms of their standing in the international community, they can do that. The stakes for them have become very high, and deliberately so, because of the decisions of the Pakistani army and the parliament, you said, which has endorsed it. Then the Lahore High Court Bar or whatever is saying that no lawyer will represent him. They have made him into such a, how should I say, huge security issue, as if he is single-handedly responsible for the turmoil in Balochistan, that stepping back for Pakistan is going to become difficult.
Yeah, okay, but on that unhappy note and a pessimistic note, we have to end this discussion. I would like to thank all of you, Mr. Narinder Singh, Ambassador Vivek Katju, Ambassador Kanwal, Sibal, for participating in this discussion. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again as usual next week. Until then, goodbye, and thanks for watching India's World.